Hello, face reveal time for who doesn't know me IRL, I guess, for maybe online only in the name of Firection Weep. Thank you for joining me today. I will be talking about the ins and outs and the key points of the third Dutch Pauper League that was held yesterday on the 4th of May. This is my first time actually talking into a mic and into a camera, so it's a bit new to me sometimes. Maybe if I stutter or I can't find the right words. You're gonna have to apologize. I'm gonna have to apologize for that. I'm trying my best to make some informative content and some fun content for you guys, and also recap a bit for myself so that I know what happened, and I just kind of like doing this. So yesterday we held the first recap of the the third leg of the Dutch Pauper League. We had a staggering 38 players join us, and this made us the biggest actually nationally organized Dutch Pauper League in the country. So we had a lot of attendance, even more than last time, where we also broke the record of the DPL. So having more than 26 players join each time doesn't seem to be a problem, which makes it so that we probably have the first two best players going to Paupergeddon next year with flight tickets and buys, which is great. Anyways, that aside, I will be going over a lot of the ins and outs of what it looked like yesterday for me, and I'm gonna go over some of the key points after the day, and I'm also gonna try and highlight some of the players and some of the decks so that they also get their time in the spotlight. I'm gonna talk about preparation, I'm gonna talk about the tournament itself and moving forward after the tournament, and I want to start out in that order, so we're gonna start out with preparation. As you might see in this picture, I came well prepared. I didn't sleep that well that night, so the kind of stuff happens. So thank you, Yuri, for this absolutely staggering beautiful picture of me. Mono Red Kodota is just very tiresome. It's a very hard deck to play. Okay, anyways, how did I end up on Kodota though? With the last Dutch Pauper League meta, we saw that Boros Synthesizer, the meta was gaining more traction, but the synthesizer list was still looking for their full 60, right? We saw them have like Journey to Nowheres in the list. Boros Synthesizer was more on the old normal list, right? But with the last Dutch Pauper League, the meta was shifting, and the Boros Synthesizer meta share, it wasn't as relevant as this third DPL. I think there were like one or two players that brought Boros Synthesizer, and this time I think there were around 4 to 6 players for sure that took Synthesizer with them. So Boros Synthesizer, the list was still finding its ground last time, and people were still skeptical on whether it was better than the current Big Shark, which was Azorius Affinity at that time. And as I concluded, the meta still shaped up towards this Boros Synth meta, and this was the reason I brought Kodota to the second DPL, because it can beat Boros Synthesizer by going faster and shaping their sideboard with cards such as Smasher Smithereens for the Artifact Hate and Gorilla Shaman for the Artifact Hate against them, with Gorilla Shaman for Mono Red being one of the better cards that is good against Boros Synthesizer. So for me it was obvious what to bring this third DPL. My meta call was correct last time because Boros Synthesizer was gaining traction in the meta, and we did see it a bit, but just not as much as this third leg. So I thought, you know what, if the meta hasn't changed yet and my meta call was right and it's still up to date, why not just run Kodota Red again? So that was my pick for this tournament, and this now brings us to one of our other players. Player is Sam. Me and Sam go back a bit in time to in my time as a semi-professional Hearthstone player. He used to be in a rivaling national esports team, and it was quite funny because we found out that we knew each other from that at one of the Amsterdam Pauper series that was held last year. And Sam reminded me a lot of myself in my time as semi-pro during during playing in the highest level in Hearthstone, and he seemed to be passionate about Magic the Gathering. So he wanted to improve, but unfortunately he also seemed to have the same pitfall as me in my time during the Hearthstone era, which was that his mindset sometimes just doesn't seem to line up with how well he wants to play. So with this in mind, I took it on me to help Sam and some of the others from Tilburg to elevate their level of play by lending a guiding hand if they had questions. What was really interesting in our preparation talk for this DPL with Sam though was that we were sure of the meta being a Spell Pierce meta. This was because there's a lot of non-creature spell decks running around that snowball out of control with their first or either second non-creature spell resolves. So think of Boros Synthesizer with Lambas or the synthesizer itself. Think about Golgari Gardeners that wants to chain the draw spells, so they play like either you counter the Ichor Wellspring or you counter the 2-mana Deadly Dispute. That really helps you gain a lot of tempo as like a tempo or aggressive decks that plays blue. And so we concluded that if there's a time in which Azorius Affinity can be a good deck with its interaction based magic, that we adjusted the sideboard accordingly with it, and we put in three spell piercers that day. For me, the only real things I changed to my list in comparison to the second DPL was that I had the new Reckless Lackeys. Before the second DPL, the list was a bit more centered around Seal of Fires. These also interacted very well with Azorius Affinity, having like belated damage. Then if they want to cast all that glitters, you have Seal of Fire on the board. So that was basically your insurance. Now they've kind of moved away from that and they've put in the new Reckless Lackey. And I threw away my two exile 2 spells, so like Rens Resolve. I threw away 2 extra Rens Resolves for 2 more Galvanic Blast. Because the evening before we had the tournament, Alex Ullman from the Pauper format panel released an article about the Pauper weekend from the 28th to the 30th of April, in which he kinda iterated that Galvanic Blast right now in the meta for every deck that even runs it, like 1 or 2, is very important. So I just kinda took his word on that and I swapped out my 2 Rens Resolve for 2 more Galvanic Blast. During the tournament, this was so far for my preparation. During the tournament, Abe was on Coggates, and we don't like Abe because Coggates has Sacred Cats and Prismatic Strats. So unfortunately it went his way because I hadn't kept the best hands and he seemed to have a perfect 7 every time, which is fine, it happens, so we move on. And in round 2 I unfortunately got paired up against Jasmine. Jasmine is one of our local players in Enschede. She was on Mono Blue Terror, and admittedly so, I was a bit sad because I lost the first round, so I wasn't really in the right mindset. So what happened the first game is we were on the beatdown plan against each other. None of us were really holding back creatures to block, which is fine, but I know with Mono Red you can get jump blockers on the field against Mono Blue Terror, right? Because they have 5/5s and 6/5s and they don't have trample, so I can just go wide and jump block. I had this perfectly in mind, but as soon as I was on my turn, it was my turn to attack, I attacked with everything, not holding back any blockers to jump block, and thus I gave her like a super easy win. Like it was like, I was stepped out, I had no blockers, I was on 9, she had 11 damage on the field, it was just done. So to be fair, after that game it was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna be it. But I tried to gain back my momentum. I just kept reciting in my head like, come on man, get your head in the game, get your head in the game, man. And fortunately I did. Like game 2 wasn't even close. It was just too fast. I had the Kodota and it was just the beatdown plan, just normal Kodota stuff. And then game 3 I realized she had the Delver of Secrets game plan. She kept like 2 Delver of Secrets and I think her plan was to protect those. So as soon as I noticed this, I tried to kill the Delver of Secrets as soon as she was tapped out. And this worked because she didn't have any follow-up threats for the rest of the game. And if she did, I had 2 Red Elemental Blasts as backup. So it was really quite easy to close out the game with some of my smaller creatures while trying to control her board by prioritizing her spells in the way that I just want my creatures to stay alive, right? Alright, so that was the round 2. I was actually quite happy that I was 1-1, because I mean starting 0-1 having prepared so much for a tournament always sucks. And unfortunately so I did have to win against one of my friends and one of the local players, but there was some hope again and my mind got a bit out of the gutter. So in round 3 I faced Nicolas Bordenabe. He's on Jeskai Affinity and he's actually one of the more consistent, better performing players in our Dutch Pauper League as of now. And it was a lot of fun. We faced off against each other earlier in the first Dutch Pauper League, and I was on Mono Blue Fairies at that time and he was on Jeskai Affinity. So I knew that he was probably going to be playing Jeskai Affinity. Game 1 I won convincingly, so being able to go wide with 2 Kodota Rebirth, yeah, it's pretty good if he doesn't have any interaction with it. Game 2 I had Kodota Rebirth twice again with a synthesizer, so it was like an easy keep. But I kinda overcommitted with both Kodota Rebirths because as soon as I cast the As soon as I cast the 2 Kodota rebirths, he put an end to festivities on board, which was really it gained him so much tempo. I just couldn't get back on the board, and I mean he just ruled the board, so he could pressure me and he could just block everything. So I didn't really had any chance after that. And then game 3, there's a few cards you really want against affinity decks that run glitters, especially after sideboard. Those are Gorilla Shaman, Smash to Smithereens, and Seal of Fire. And luckily enough, I chose to keep one Seal of Fire in my deck for this tournament, just because I knew that there were going to be a lot of all that glitters decks. So I saw 4 cards, and those were 2 Mountains, Seal of Fire, and Smash to Smithereens. Knowing that Nicholas was on Jeskai, it made sense to keep this hand, because Seal of Fire interacts really well, just like I said, with all that glitters. And Smash to Smithereens can break one of his lands. And luckily enough, he did keep a 1-lander. He kept the Ancient Den, and I was on the play. So turn 1 I just put out a Seal of Fire, and turn 2 I went Smash to Smithereens on his Ancient Den, and the rest is history because he didn't draw another land. So I just cleaned up his board with some burn spells, and I kept hitting him with my smaller creatures, and that was it. So luckily enough, I'm 2-1, I'm feeling good, I'm pretty happy. And we're going into round 4. So round 4, I'm against Goose Hinrichs. Me and Goose go way back. We were the first 2 players to really set a mark on the Pauper scene in Enschede. We were already playing and convincing everyone there to play Pauper in around 2019 to 2020. So yeah, we go way back, and there's always like this little small rivalry going on where we really want to beat each other. And I was set on winning this time because last time he won against me. But to be fair, I was a bit bummed out when I heard I had to play against Cycle Storm, because that's what Goose was on. But it was a fun match either way. Game 1 took a whopping 30 minutes to finish because Goose was struggling to find a window in which to kill me. Game 2, me being on the play as Kodota, took a whopping 5 minutes. And then game 3, we closed it out quickly too, because there was not a lot of time on the clock yet, but I did have a really good start. So how it went game 3, it was really interesting, because I recognized he wasn't on the old artifact build where he ran the artifact lands, and I had seen in game 1 almost all of his deck, right? And I saw that he was relying on blue spells a lot to keep chaining his spells together. And he had a life gain spell in the likes of the Hada's Ploy. The Hada's Ploy is an Demir multicolored card for 3 mana, so like 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black. And it would let him gain loads of life, because for every card he discarded, he would gain a life, which, I mean, cycling is discarding, so it just gains him a lot of life, and Kodota doesn't want to see that happen. So what happened is I pressured him a lot, and I put him on the ropes to combo off, but I had 1 mana open with the red blast in hand, because I boarded in those red elemental blasts just because I saw that he was reliant of the blue spells a lot. And when he was doing his combo turn, like the turn before I could kill him, he almost tapped out. He had like 1 black open after that, but he tapped 3 of his 4 mana to cast the Hada's Ploy, and I just red blasted it, and that was enough to get me over the line. So I was really happy with that. Yeah, I mean, my guess was correct. It was a good sideboard card, and I was really happy to go from 0-1 to 3-1. And then in round 5, I was against Ave. Ave is one of the few players who got to beat me on my mono blue Varys deck during my time playing that. And we chatted a bit before our round, where we had to play against each other about like our sideboard and mainboard, because we sat next to each other before, and we both saw that we were both playing Kodota, so I just wanted to have a chat with him to see how other players play their decks and how they argument their choices, right? So what happened? Game 1, it was the mirror. He had double Kodota with synthesizers. I did not. Game 2, I did have a decent opening hand. It was 4 lands, a Voldaren Epicure, a Gorilla Shaman, and a Smash to Smithereens. To be fair, not the strongest of hands, because no, actually you don't want lands against a burn deck, but because I had the Voldaren Epicure in hand and I had some interaction for his artifacts, so in case he played like a Great Furnace, then the hand would be really good, right? Because you destroy one of their lands, you have to put there an Epicure to filter out one of your other mountains that's still in your hand. So I was like, okay, this could work out. But unfortunately, in game 2, I drew 8 out of my 16 lands in my first 15 cards. Estimatedly, I don't know, I didn't count, it was just in my first 15 cards, 8 of my 16 lands. It just didn't go well. I was stuck with another Smash Smithereens in my hand. The Gorilla Shaman had cleaned up all of his artifacts, and even when he got more artifacts on the land on the battlefield, it was the implement of combustions, so every time I wanted to target it, he would sacrifice it, and it doesn't work. So it was really rough. I went from 3-1 to 3-2, essentially destroying my chances at making a top cut. So like 1, 2, 3, which was fine, but 3-2 is still a record I was happy with. I was hellbent on going 4-2, so I got a sort of finals for me in my head in round 6. Round 6 was really interesting. I was paired against Robert. We had also chatted earlier that day about what we brought, because we were looking a bit at the top tables, and you just chat a bit with each other. It's in the end, it's a fun tournament, but there's also a lot of fun people to chat around with. So I had a nice chat with him, but when we were paired against each other, I genuinely forgot what he was on. And apparently it was Goblin combo, but luckily enough, as we joked around, I was a very good Magic player, and in game 1 I kept hitting lands with my synthesizers, because I kept a 1-lander with a synthesizer on the draw. So I was like, yeah man, I'm just gonna flip the synthesizer, and I flip a Great Furnace, and then I'm on 2 lands, and I draw another synthesizer, I play it again, and I flip another mountain. So I was joking around saying like, oh my god, I'm such a good Magic player, right? And we were having a laugh about it. And then at a certain point, Robert was down to mulligan to 5, and he had basically already given up. And me being the good Magic player I am, I joked him I kept a 1-lander with a synthesizer, again to show how good I am, of course. And long story short, he drew into his combo, and I never found a second land, so that was 1-1. And when we went to game 3, I kind of had the nuts opener, because I had Relic on 1, so he wouldn't get the opportunity to duress it out of my hand. So I just opened with a turn 1 Relic, and I pressured him with the Relic as backup, and that was enough to close out the game. So in the end, we ended 4-2 again, just like last time in the second DPL. And we had a rough start facing a bad matchup against Cargates, and in round 4 against Ave, Variance got a bit to us. Not that Ave didn't play well, he played really well, but also a bit of Variance, I couldn't really resist it. Enough about my rounds though. We're gonna check how the top 16 meta looked like, we're gonna check the winning top 3 decks, and we're gonna highlight my favorite players so far. I'll explain that. Alright, I gotta admit, filming this video was a lot harder than I previously thought that it'd be, which is fine, but I sometimes need to catch up with my breath, so don't mind if I do. For the top 16, top 16 was shaped up by 9 very dominant decks. These were 3 times Boros Synthesizer, 3 times Affinity, and 3 times Kadota Red, with the distinction between them being that all the 3 Boros Synthesizers looked alike, but the Affinity decks were 2 times Azorius Affinity and 1 times Jeskai Affinity. And then for Kadota Red, we had 1 Sticker Goblin aggro, and we had 2 times normal Kadota Red. These 9 decks all took up a 65.25% of the metagame, which is more than half. So this should give us a really good example of what we could expect in the 4th DPL before the Modern Horizons update. An honorable mention I would like to make is for Tim Bunnick. Tim Bunnick brought Tron, and for as far as I can see, he had a really rough start to the season for DPL, and I'm really happy he got to finish top 8 with Tron this time. As I had previously discussed, this meta was about either playing Synthesizer or going underneath it with a faster deck such as Kadota. So it was really satisfying to actually see somebody bring Sticker Goblin and doing really well with it. So congrats to Nicolas. Nicolas got 3rd with Sticker Goblin, and I hope to see you next time. Hopefully you still play Sticker Goblin, maybe a different iteration, we don't know. But it was really fun seeing you try it out and actually succeeding with it. Then for number 2, he was a more newer player to the scene, Mark Bosma. He was on Azorius Affinity, and even though I had no prior knowledge of this player and how much experience he had, he got to pilot Azorius Affinity with a very interesting list. He wasn't really Jeskai, but neither really just Azorius, because he was playing 2 Galvanic Blast, and 2 Blacksmith Skill, which is normally like a maybe board, like a maybe sideboard card, right? So it was a really interesting list to see, and I'm not sure if I agree with it, because I'm not sure if diluting your mana pool just for 2 Galvanic Blasts is worth it, especially since you also have access to 4x Springleaf Drum, for example. I am really impressed with Blacksmith Skill, because Blacksmith Skill is a card that's often overlooked, so I'm really happy it finally got to perform really well that day. Congrats on your second place finish, Mark. We hope to see you more, and we hope to see you keep innovating that list. And then for first place we have Tone. Tone has been on Familiars and is part of the play group from which Sam also comes, and has been playing Familiars for as long as he's been in the DPL. I must admit, Familiars is one of the decks that I'm very unfamiliar with, and what I do know is that it's a very skill intensive deck, but you know, it was just a blast hearing Tone say after the finals was done, finally a tournament without a draw, and then for him to be crowned winner of the third leg of the DPL. So Tone, congrats, much respect for the deck you did it with, and congrats on your first place finish. Now for the highlight player, I'm a bit biased, but in my opinion, you know, he hasn't won an event yet, but I'm sure he's on track to do so. It's gonna be Sam. Sam is one of our more younger players, and I'm one of his practice partners, and I think being in third in the accumulated standings of this year with an opponent match win percentage of 64.27%, it shows that he not only had to fight for the wins, but he was also playing against better opponents than him at that time, and that he can be able to, you know, hold his own against better players sometimes. I'm excited to see where Sam goes this year, because, you know, he is a newer player and he's really developing a lot as a player, which I'm happy to see, because, you know, we all wanna win. So I'm gonna look forward to see where Sam goes this year in terms of deck choices and development as an overall player, and how this hopefully will elevate the rest of the field and the contenders in the DPL. So we have come to the end of this video. How about moving forward after this DPL? How will the meta shape up? We had Azorius Affinity being dominant, making the black shells that run Snuff Outs being dominant, so like Golgari Gardens, Dimir Fairies, Dimir Terror, and now we have synthesizer decks that sorry man, my pronunciation. Synthesizer decks that outvalue these black shell decks. I'm not sure how the meta will respond to this, and if it even will have the chance to respond to this before Modern Horizons 3 shakes up the meta again. And I'm really curious about what's in the announcement about where Pauper goes, because I'm not sure how he's called again, Gavin Verhey, I think. Yeah, Gavin Verhey announced that they will be announcing something about Pauper in like 2 weeks. I think it's just gonna be like, hey guys, we know all that glitters is really dominant in the meta right now, and it's in basically every top deck at this point. Not like every top deck, but the meta is shaping up a lot around it, right? Everybody responds to the all the glitters decks. I don't think they're gonna have time to ban it before Modern Horizons 3 comes out. I think it's more fair to give all that glitters a chance within the Modern Horizons 3 meta. So I think what will happen is they will say we're gonna keep an eye on all that glitters, and then during the Modern Horizons 3 meta they will probably decide on whether or not it has to go because of its presence in the meta. I would like to thank John Vito for lending me this new mic. Hopefully it has been a bit more doable hearing this little zoomer yap about Magic the Gathering. And you know, I would also like to thank everyone who joined the DPL so far this year, and of course the amazing people behind the scenes making this all possible. I think it's really cool to see that we're growing our community out a lot again, and I hope you enjoyed this recap and I've been able to inspire or entertain some of you, and I will see you guys next DPL. Make sure you bring end to festivities. Thank you for watching.